This is going to be a very dark video because it's 6:30 and it's been a very rainy day. It's actually still raining. It's a rainy Sunday and I actually did work today. I gave workshops which were great. So many people came. Very happy. And now I'm just kicking back before having dinner with some red wine. And I wanted to talk to you about elements and how I associate different things with them. And basically, it's just asking questions about what it's mostly about that search. What did I first learn and what do I believe now? Because whatever I learn, I noticed in tarot, whatever I learned, I always tend to check with myself, do I agree with this? Does this feel right? And that's very strong. That's like a key point in learning to understand the tarot, learning to understand what those meanings mean to you. When you're on that learning curve, which actually never ends, but let's just say mostly in the beginning, when you start to study and really go hardcore into what is the tarot and how can I read these cards fluently, you will realize when you do it right what makes sense to you, what is true to you, what is truth for you. You will not only learn the tarot, you will also learn about yourself. So the elements, of course, for me, cups are water, wands are fire, swords are air, and pentacles are earth. Some decks switch the fire and the air elements. Some decks say that fire is swords and air is wands. Now I don't agree with that, and the decks that I have don't switch those elements. There are some readers who I admire very much who don't even look at the suits as elements. They look at them like cups are feelings, your heart, your soul, your inspiration. Wands are the sexual center, creation, willpower, motivation, passion. Pentacles is your body, your well-being, your material life. And swords is your intellect and your communication, your ideas, your memories. Well, for me, that just goes together. That blends together. For me, it really helps to have those elements, the element of the elements put into this. Because when I was younger, I don't remember exactly what age, just a young teenager, still very much a child, I studied the basics of witchcraft. It was so interesting. One of the first things that you learn there has to do with the elements. So that I don't follow rules anymore, but I do like the basics. In the 90s, the only books you could get, or I could get, were not only witchcraft, but Wicca. It was very much the same, pulled together. Only now I feel that distinction is clearly made. Not all witches believe, for instance, in the rule of three. For me, it's kind of like there's a moral thing going on in my head where I just don't want to curse anyone, because I do think karma exists in a way, and I just don't want to be that person. That last sentence that I just said, and I just don't want to be that person, that's just me. I don't think I could ever truly believe that I do harm to someone in a magical way. You have to truly believe it for it to work. So there you go. That immediately went in a weird direction. But what I'm trying to say is the first things that I learned are basically the basics of Wicca. That's simply what was available to me. They started off with saying, how do you set up an altar? And even that was so restricted. Like, I don't do that stuff anymore. But because it was the first thing that I learned, the first thing that I did in a way fell in love with, I still managed to keep all 4 elements on my altar. Or I don't even really know if it's an altar. It's just a tarot space. A space that's nice. A space where I just pull a card and light some candles, light some incense. So we of course have water, earth, fire, and air. So air on your altar would be incense, the smoke of the incense. Fire, obviously, candles. Water is water or any liquid. And then earth, what I learned was salt, which for me personally really works because I also need salt. That's a weird story. That's a weird sidetrack. I really need salt to feel good. I was the type of kid who every day went to my mom, holding up my little hand, asking for a tiny bit of salt that I could eat, just so I won't feel faint. And now I know, really later on, I found out that I have low blood pressure. That's why I need salt. Whenever I start to yawn repeatedly, that means that I need salt. So that to me feels actually grounding. So the earth, salt, grounding. That makes sense to me personally. You can also have, of course, some soil. I still want to get some graveyard soil, but I really want it to be a graveyard that has a special meaning to me. So I got the Druid Craft for my birthday. I'm turning 32 next week. I love it. I trimmed it to this size. I initially wanted to trim it like this with the green border because, unpopular opinion, I love borders. But then this just seemed too perfect, especially because of the backs. They no longer have the copyright, so all you get is lines. And this is, of course, perfectly centered. So I figured that was just the way to go. I also think the cardstock is improved. It just feels softer. It feels like there's a little more love in there somehow. Because I remember I used to have another Druid Craft, but it got away from me. And I remember it was rough. It was pretty rough. But this one is quite beautiful. So I'm happy with it. So I'm reading the book now. I have the big book. I really do wish, though, that they would just explain a little bit more about what they're talking about. Just, for instance, well, the Ace of Swords, really. Not everyone knows that this is the Lady of the Lake in the whole Arthurian history. Like, who is that again? Morgan? Vivian? Whatever generation you're looking at. Apart from that, they've made me think about what are these suits or elements? What season are they? So in this deck, I believe, if I remember correctly, wands are summer. There's just no doubt about that ever. Then cups are autumn, fall. Then pentacles are winter, yes. And swords are spring. Now, I have learned this in almost, only the wands are summer in every scenario. Because I also found that it's pretty logical to have Earth, Pentacles, as spring, and then the swords as winter, and then the cups as autumn. But then I also saw cups as winter, and then we have autumn, when leaves fall to the ground, and then we have spring. So I'm having a hard time to figure out, and this is all just for fun, because who cares about this shit in a reading, right? I understand the suits, I understand the elements. I can bring that message to the querents, the people who ask the questions, the people who ask for a reading. But it's just for me, like, everything in a way makes sense. But the way that, let's go back to the way that the Druid craft is explaining it. I loved that Pentacles are winter. I did love that. Just because I see the Ace of Pentacles, especially the Ace of Pentacles, as a seed that you put in the ground and you wait. You have to take care of it, you have to water it, you have to give it sunlight, you have to tend to it for it to grow. Even though in winter everything seems dead under that blanket of snow, there's the promise that the seeds will come out again, that the seeds will find the daylight, the air. They will grow outside of the ground into the air. So that was lovely, that made sense. The first thing I learned was swords is winter. Just 'cause swords are so damn cold. But I feel that the element of air, swords, that suit, has gotten kind of a bad rep in the tarot world. Who can blame whoever's idea this was? It does make sense. It's these cold, hard decisions. But it's not only misery, right? This is not like the black, dark, horrible suit in the tarot. This is just one of the 4 suits. And it doesn't necessarily mean bad things and doom. This is the power of the mind. Once you're aware, you can do something about it. Once you're aware that you can make your own decisions, doom, bad luck, doesn't even really exist anymore in your life. Whenever there is a case of bad luck, or whatever that is, you just focus on how to deal with it, rather than feeling really bad and sorry for yourself. It's an active suit, just like the wands. You can see it's like a masculine energy, if you know what I mean. And then here are the receptive suits, water and earth. Just like the numbers. This is the stability, the receptivity, and this is the action. And so these are the, like the whole numbers? What is it called? These are the odd numbers. This is like, this is 1, this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Even numbers. Wow, now I figure it out. Okay. I would love to know, first of all, if you see wands as fire or swords as fire. Second of all, what season do you associate with what element or what suit, and why? Because everything kind of makes sense. But then again, I see it. I really do see it. I see this as autumn. I see this as winter. At the same time, I can see it the opposite way. Because winter and ice. And just think about it. It's not cold necessarily. Yes, it's cold outside. But what do you do in the cold months? Christmas? Spending time with your family? I really do see it there, you know, you really warm your heart from the inside. I also see it there. But autumn, I also see not only all the rain, but you can think of all the leaves falling to the ground. The earth. This is a very rambly video. So next thing I wanted to say, and I don't have the cards to show, but it has to do with the elements as well. What I learned when I first started to study tarot, and this is already like next level shit. You don't really get this immediately, I believe, unless you study the Thoth, I believe. The first thing that I learned is pages are earth. Think of the seed that you plant in the ground. It can only grow from there. Then you have nights. What I learned, nights are air, active, action. They go for it. Then you have the queens. Obviously, the feminine suit, water, cups. Cups like a womb of the woman. Then you have the kings. They are fire. Also active. And I don't even know what to add to that anymore, because that does not make sense anymore. And I can't believe it took me this long to get there. Now, it took some getting used to anyway to see the pages as an element on their own. Especially earth. Earth that is so grounded. Your roots. That's where you come from. It's like it's supposed to be wise, right? I mean, that's how I feel about it. But no, you can see earth as the little seed that you plant. So yes, earth, pages, the beginning, and then the sprouting and the growing. Queens are cups. That's pretty much set. Of course. Knights are fire. Because, first of all, that's how the cards of the Rider-Waite-Smith are combined with the cards of the Thoth. The court cards in the Thoth are explained and described as the knights in the court cards of the Rider-Waite-Smith. As in, these are fire, with all the stuff going on in the background, with all the clouds, with all the... I'm probably not explaining this well for anyone who hasn't seen both these decks compared. But the knights are fire. Because fire is an active number, so that an active suit, so that makes sense. And at the same time, it's uncontrollable. You have to have a lot of control to control fire. Yeah, you can spark. You can make a spark. You can start a fire. But how to control it? How to contain it? And the knights, that's the energy that we're, you know, that's still young energy. That's very much related to the knight's energy. So then we go to kings, which I used to see as fire because that's what I learned. Made sense as well in a way because it's also active, male. But it's not fire, no. They are air. They're the master of the elements. They control the element. I don't see the kings as fire if they control the element. That's what you learn in Marseille. The king controls the element. The king is on top of the element. The queen is the heart of the element. She understands it. The page is in front of the element. He tries to learn it. The knight takes the element to the outside as like a messenger. And then the king finally on top, air. The intellect, the mind, air, controls the element, is a master of the element. So that made a lot of sense to me. I learned with Rider-Waite-Smith. I'm very interested in Thoth. I'm still learning it. I don't agree with all the keywords, but aside from that, the court cards were a revelation. And then now, digging a little deeper, just asking yourself these questions, like I said, what seasons are the elements? And once you know that, you can even put that onto the court cards, like, are queens autumn? Are kings spring? I don't know. You tell me. Wow, well, that was a passionate ramble, wasn't it? I just love to talk about these things, and I figured it was about time that I started, to ramble about what I believe, really, and how I think about tarot. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I have a call. See you later.